Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, your host and chief monkey, and this is the Wall Street Oasis podcast. Join me as I talk to some of the community's most successful and inspirational members to gain valuable insight into different career paths and life in general. Let's get to it. In this episode, FinTechSF shares his winding path from graduating during the financial crisis in 2008 and having to leave the US as an international student back to Dubai. Learn how he got his foot in the door at PwC in Audit and managed to make the transition over to transaction advisory practice in only 1.5 years, even though they kept telling him no. Find out also why he moved back to the US a few years later and eventually joined the corporate side in their M&A group. Enjoy. Okay, FinTechSF, thanks so much for joining the Wall Street Oasis podcast.
Hey, Patrick, happy to be here.
So it'd be great if you could just give the listeners a short summary of your bio.
Yeah, happy to. So I've studied in school in California, graduated in 2008, right in the heart of the financial crisis.
Good timing. Good timing.
Yeah. To add to that, I was an international student, so made life even harder to find a job.
Oh my gosh! I just talked to a guy earlier today who also graduated exactly in a way, and he turned down an offer from Goldman, and then like 3 days later, Lehman collapsed. He's like, "What did I do?"
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. So international student, 2008 graduate.
Yeah. So I was trying to make something happen in California. It didn't work out. I went back home, which is Dubai for me, over in the Middle East. Dubai itself was kind of reeling from this real estate crisis, and managed to grab a position in audit with Big Four company PwC, and from there sort of navigated my way, made it into transaction services, which is the M&A advisory side of things over there. Further on from there, just sort of, it's a global firm. They offer these opportunities for mobility in different offices. Made it out from the Dubai office to the San Francisco office. Spent about 8 years in Big Four, and then pivoted over to the corporate side, which is where I am now.
Very cool. And then you were in M&A basically for how long? You've been at a couple firms now for a couple of years. You were kind of in Corp Fin, right? As like doing M&A. At a large company, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's been about 3 years, or rather 2 years now, since I've left PwC. And I've juggled a couple of corporate finance and specialty valuation roles.
Great.
So everything is related sort of, to valuations and different applications of it, not specifically to M&A, but also just to like financial reporting and just complex instruments.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing. So you grew up in Dubai and you came to the States for school. Was the thought here, hey, I'm going to get a job here in the States right after graduating before the financial crisis hit? What was the thought process? Had you traveled to the US a lot? I'd love to hear a little bit just culturally how that was.
Yeah, no, just very different economies, right? Very different stages of where things are in Dubai versus the US. Dubai still sort of, trying to attract a lot of talent, spending a lot of capital to build out its infrastructure. And US, of course, is obviously relative to Dubai, light years ahead. So the intent was always to start a career in the US, get all that experience and see where that takes me, right? Whether that keeps me behind in the US or I have the opportunity to go back in Dubai and take on more leadership roles and, manage an organization with all that experience gained in the US. And that's typically the path, most people take in Dubai. It attracts a lot of Western talent, specifically from the UK. And they're looking for people, capable people, just good quality human capital to come and build stuff out over there. So that was always the goal. So 2008 threw a spanner in the works.
And so you joined Audit. Were you interested in Audit at all, or was it just like what you could get when you went back to Dubai?
So when I graduated and I was looking for stuff, banking was obviously sort of the goal. And times are really challenging, didn't work out. I remember going back to Dubai and there's this financial center in downtown. It's called DIFC. which is Dubai International Financial Center. I went to their website. I downloaded a list of every single office in the IFC operating there, hedge fund, small boutique banks, advisory companies, whatever, because that was the goal. I really wanted to get that experience. And it was funny, as I was calling some of them, they were like, yeah, we're shutting down actually.
Wow.
So that was
like a lot of the hedge funds, you mean, and like even the small banks were just like, that's it, closing up shop.
Yeah. I mean, some of them just got destroyed. The funds, and then some of the boutique banks, just there was no deal flow. They just weren't able to take things off the ground.
I wonder how much of that is similar to now, given everything that's going on with COVID. I mean, probably what seems is like the market is ignoring a lot of the fact that we're in a recession, right? Like it's interesting, like dichotomy between the two times, like 10 years ago and now, and how there's some similarities, but it doesn't feel quite the same. This feels almost like it's a more of a temporary situation where like there, it almost felt like the whole world, like the whole financial system was going to collapse, right? At least from when I remember it.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's funny how much of it is the same and how much of it is different, right? And you can see a lot of the similar sort of stopgap measures being put in place. Federal aid coming in and whatnot. Yeah. Obviously, the quantity and the packages are different, but in 2008, we kind of knew when this was going to end, sort of. Yeah. With COVID, who knows? Second wave, third wave, who knows, right? That's the scary part, but yeah, you're right.
So you started in audit, you said, but then you eventually transitioned to transaction advisory services. What was the thought process there? Because you learned from somewhere that you wanted to be on the transaction side because it interested you, or because you thought, hey, for my career, this is a good move?
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of personal interest. And you asked a question earlier about why I got into audit. It was a lot of times, I mean, the mindset I had was that, look, this is a huge organization, right? They do a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to say no to an opportunity to be part of the organization, even though it's not my initial choice. My first choice was not audit, of course. I'd always been interested in the M&A side of things, but the fact that I could be part of this company and see where that takes me was what appealed to me. And then yeah, just got in, and then
plus the safety of a big company in those times. I would think that theoretically it's a little, especially audit. People still need to do their audits, right?
Yeah, it's the bread and butter, right? So
it's the bread and butter.
What keeps the lights on. So there's always going to be work. You're going to be busy, and for someone fresh out of college, look, it's a great learning experience. You're working with some really big clients in that part of the world. Yeah, it's just great hands-on experience to just get things going, and meanwhile you're sort of talking to people, working things out, and getting to eventually where you want to go.
Yeah, tell me about that transition, because I've talked to a few people who've made that same exact transition. You're talking about the audit to TAS internally, and I know for some people it was super hard. Other people it was like not that hard. I'd love to hear just your experience. Did you have to network for like a year or a couple of years? Did you just work on a few things with the TAS team, and then eventually they liked you and brought you over? How did it exactly work out for you?
I mean, thankfully, not a year of not a lot of networking involved there, but I will say I did knock on a couple of the doors, and a lot of people were like, "Yeah, look, we're kind of small and we're very agile and we're very top heavy. You need to have an MBA or a certain amount of banking experience to get in this." So a lot of it was just meeting people, learning about what the team does, what they and sort of how they're structured and the work they have.
So they were basically telling you no for a while, for a little bit at least.
Yeah. In fact, when even before I got into audit, when I was talking to the recruiter, I told him, "Look, this is not my first preference," and he said, "Yeah, but TAS, this is what they're looking for, and you don't have any of that in terms of an MBA or work experience." And so it's not the first time I heard a no, but that didn't deter me. The opportunities.
So the recruiter was right, and in a way, you got your foot in the door.
Yeah,
with audit, okay, and then I mean, I've heard it's sometimes tough. So you were still hearing no a little bit, like even once you were internal.
Yeah, and that's why you just got to be persistent, right? Like I knew like 5 to 10 years out, right? I didn't see myself being a partner of an audit practice. Sure, I saw myself being, on the deal side of things, and that persistence just kicks in. You want to make that happen ASAP. So yeah, it's just a matter of talking to more people and not being not being discouraged by hearing a no.
Was it because
not,
the team was so small in Dubai for the valuation side? It was that kind of the one of the impediments? Like, did you feel like you had to make a transition first to the US office? Because you were in Dubai for a good 5 years, right?
Yeah. I transitioned to evaluations within Dubai itself.
Within Dubai. Okay. Was that a small team, a relatively small team?
It was a small team. They have a ton of work. So the way it works is you're always looking for people who can hit the ground running. And sort of, you've got to build that sort of, that belief in them that, yep, I'm capable. I know what I'm doing. I understand the things work, et cetera. And
what did you have to show, like, that you knew about valuation, and how do you demonstrate that in audit?
It's not just about valuation. So I mean, in its essence, right? Valuation is just a cash flow model, and there's a set of cash flows and a discount rate, right? Like,
right.
In its essence, the part that I think sets most people out is, hey, what did you learn in audit that you could leverage in valuations, right? And there's two things that I sort of picked up. One was just getting really grounded in financial statements, right? A lot of folks who focus so much on the finance, the corporate finance side of things, sort of seem a little out of place when dealing with complex, accounting matters. Sometimes those could have valuation impacts. When you don't know how to read a balance sheet properly, it could throw you in a loop.
Yeah.
So that was one thing, just demonstrating, like, yep, I've got that grounding. I know how to read this stuff. And two was just bringing some of that commercial insight. One of the benefits of audit is you're literally sitting with a client and you're asking them all these questions about their business. That is great first-hand experience and exposure, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that, like I mentioned earlier, at its core, at its essence, valuation is just a cash flow discount rate. The color and the quality that comes in is that commercial experience. How do you make sense out of this? How do you tell a story from the numbers? Mm-hmm. So a lot of that was just demonstrating that, yep, I've got that commercial insight too. And I know and
that comfort around clients too, right?
Yeah, just being able to speak and being able to talk and relate to things.
And so how many years did it take you to make that jump? 2 years before they?
A year and a half.
Wow, pretty fast.
Pretty fast, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to push hard. you got to keep at it.
So, like, when was the first time you said, hey, did you talk to HR? Did you talk to, like, a mentor in the valuation practice and TAS that, like,
it's one of those things where you start from the bottom and work your way up. I started talking to, like, a couple of senior associates, managers in TAS teams. And then they would just keep referring me. And I made my way from, like, a senior manager to a director. And then I was sitting in the partner's office saying, hey, what do you think?
And so how long did that whole process take? And tell me a little bit about, like, what the conversations were like. Because I think there's people who find themselves in that seat. I think it's always interesting, especially for people who want to go to investment banking. We always say TAS is kind of where you need to be in the Big Four to have that shot to transition,
Yeah, and I think why that's true is just because of the reasons I mentioned earlier, right? You're getting hands-on sort of experience with financial statements, just getting commercial insights, especially on the diligence side of things. You're literally ripping a company apart and figuring it all out, and that's so much more valuable than just knowing how to pick a discount rate, right?
Yeah.
Both of which are equally important.
Yeah.
So a lot of those conversations were exactly that. Folks just saying, yeah, but valuations and M&A is very different from audit. So how can what experience can you bring? And it's going to take a while. Our team is pretty small, and no one's got the time to handhold and things like that. It was just sort of going back and forth all the time.
What was the most junior person they had there? An MBA
at the time? Yeah. They
really weren't lying when they said you have to have an MBA.
No, they weren't.
And so eventually you convinced them to give you a shot.
Yeah, a lot of that was, like I said, I'd already been in audit for a year. I'd done 2 out of my 3 CFA levels already, and I was taking the 3rd one that summer.
You were a hard worker. You were proving that you were living at the office. You were stepping up for all the hard projects, putting in long hours. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, there are sacrifices you have to make, right?
Yeah.
You've got to put in the time and the effort.
Talking to you, I can tell you were diligent.
Yeah. I mean, the networking and all that is just one aspect of it, but ultimately they put you to the test. And I mean, you still have to go through internal interviews and whatnot. It's not just, partner picking up on the phone and making a call and saying, yep, just move him from here to there.
How did you deal with the audit? Like your bosses in audit, were they upset? Were they annoyed? Did they know you were doing all this networking? And like you kept trying? Were they like thinking, yeah, what's wrong with us?
It's one of those things that you've got to be careful about how you navigate, because there's the official way to do it, right? You talk to your coach, and your coach raises a request and sets up a meeting and whatnot. Or there's sort of the quote unquote informal way to do it, where you just have sort of coffee conversations with people and say, hey, I'm interested. What do you think? So to answer your question, people were aware, but it's not uncommon. I'm not the first one to do this. But for most people, for my coach, or for other people in the audit practice, right, there's a bunch of other things that are top priority for them. They have clients, engagements, and lots of other stuff going on.
And you were getting your work done, and you weren't complaining.
Yeah, of course, that's priority, right? You can't be one of those sort of.
Yeah, if you're just like, audit stinks, I want to go valuation, TAS, you're never going to make it.
I mean, then you're going to lose PwC altogether. Never mind just audit. You'll just be like, this guy's not a team player. He just doesn't work.
Fair.
So folks know about it.
You know what that reminds me of? There was a thread on the site the other day about. It was really funny. It was this guy saying, "This is how an intern got me to forward his resume." And it started out going through all the things the person did, and then it was like all these horrible. He was being sarcastic. It was all satiric of like all the horrible things.
Yeah,
that could be said. So he was like, yeah, I don't want to do quant. What about investment banking? And like, it was just ignoring what the person did. It's just trying to see if they had a connection. Just so horribly, just a horrible job at networking. And so like, I think there's a little bit of that here. You really need to make sure that you're still grateful for what you have, and you're not throwing it in people's faces. And
there's like ways to have those conversations, right? So when I started in audit, I was part of the team that they had, which is called, they called it CIPS, CIPS, but what that meant was, it's the consumer sector. And when I was talking to my coach, he's like, look, maybe audit's not all that bad. Maybe just this team's not for you. Why don't you try out a different team? Why don't you go to financial services or energy or something like that? Mm-hmm. And it's sort of just knowing how to have those conversations. And one thing that helped me is that I told him, I was like, look, I've worked with seniors on certain engagements, right? Like managers or senior managers. And I've seen the work they do. And I've just asked myself, is that where I want to be 5 to 10 years from now? Is that sort of responsibilities and the interactions and the level of work that I want to be doing? And my answer was, well, not really, right? I see myself on sort of operating in this M&A type of situation, working on deals and having different sorts of experiences. I recognize all this work is very valuable, but I just don't see myself being here 5 to 10 years out. And how I made that call was looking at where my seniors are. So at least they understand that, all right, this guy's not just, I want to be in banking. He's put thought into it, and he knows what he wants, and he knows how to get there.
You had well-structured answers. It wasn't like just hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. It would be for a good reason. Okay, so you tell me about the transition a little from Dubai back to the U.S. and how did that happen? I know you said it's a global organization, so it kind of offered that opportunity. But tell me, why you came back and what that was like.
And it comes back to just the fact that very different economies, right? I'd been in Dubai for about 5 years with the valuations team there, mm-hmm. and Dubai, it's great because it's a small, relatively anyway, small economy compared to the US, and you get to work with the best clients. We had sovereign wealth funds, we had PE funds, the big family businesses of the Middle East as all of our clients. And after a certain point, you're like, well, there's got to be more to life than this, right? What are all those folks in the US talking about all the time? I want to go see some of that. So it's just that curiosity and just application of a skill set in a different environment. There isn't sort of, this big SEC type watchdog in the US, and there are all these massive reporting requirements, whatnot. The stock market's not as big as it is in the US. So the type of work you do, the nature of the work you do is very, very different from what is done in the US valuations office by PwC, for example. So it's still valuations, it's just different applications of it. And that's something
what type of companies were you evaluating? And for what?
in
For mergers, it was like a fairness opinion and stuff. What does the team specifically do?
So it was actually straight up just valuation advisory. So how much is your business worth, right?
Got it.
Helping them build
people,
a business
private
plan.
equity funds looking to sell, whatever, and it could be a whole range of things.
Yeah, just exit, buy side, sell side, everything. But the key distinction is, right, when I came to the US, and the valuation team over here does a lot of what's known as purchase price allocations or goodwill allocation exercises, which doesn't really, that kind of work when I was in Dubai didn't really quite exist at that time. Okay. So that was great. Huge learning opportunity. What is a purchase price allocation? I mean, I know what it is theoretically, but how do you do one? And again, it's just valuation. It's just different applications of it. So things like that was just interesting. And then to add to that, I got to the San Francisco office for PwC, and all of the clients over here are all tech companies, as you imagine, the Googles of the world. Yeah. And that is experience that I was not getting in Dubai, right? Just the economy in Dubai is more real estate, banking, and consumer, largely speaking. And tech is obviously, very, very fast growing part of the economy. Sure. And I'd love to get some of that experience. So a couple of things that sort of pushed me to make this move happen. And again, it wasn't easy, right? And nothing ever is.
What was the hardest part of the jump?
Well, first figuring out what the team does, right? Valuations. I spent hours on LinkedIn just messaging lots of PwC folks and different offices, Canada, Australia, all over. I mean, just, hey, what do you guys do there? I just didn't want to assume it's the same work. And then, I mean, how do you explain to someone, hey, why did you pick San Francisco? Like, the PwC's office is everywhere. Europe is attractive. London's attractive. Why don't you go there? And what team, right? Within valuations, there's this modeling teams and there's other teams. So you really got to put in the effort, because it just makes the process that much easier.
Effort to figure out kind of what would be a good fit for yourself? Is that what you mean by effort?
Yep. What location? So I actually interviewed with a bunch of folks. I interviewed with the London office. I had conversations with the Australia office. Mm-hmm. Those didn't work out, and I was very, very heartbroken. I really wanted to make it happen, right? When you're at a stage in your career, you're still, not too experienced, relatively young, because moving is always difficult. Yeah. Folks typically assume you move and you join at the same position, but oftentimes you take a step back, and doing that becomes that much harder when you're more experienced and you're more senior. Yeah. So I felt like the timing was right. So I really wanted to happen. And when London and Australia didn't work out, it's kind of a bummer, but you just keep pushing. And again, it was just networking. I got hold of a recruiter for PwC in the San Jose office, actually, not even San Francisco. Uh-huh. And yeah, I was talking to her, and then she put me in touch with a partner, and then that's kind of what kicked it all off.
It's so interesting. It's like you work at the same company, but you're still networking outside of it, like through recruiters.
Yeah.
That just shows you how massive it is. It's like you need to like hustle on your own to stay within the same company if you're moving. I mean, it's a big move, so I understand.
But you said it right. I mean, the effort is still there. It's people think that it's a big company, so they have all these processes in place, but oftentimes, I mean, that it kind of slows things down a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. Decision making, and there's too many yeses that have to happen.
Yeah.
So tell me, okay, so you're there, you're here in SF for 3+ years. The transition, I see eventually you started kind of getting up to speed. You felt good after a year or so, stayed there for a few more years. And then when did you start kind of looking to go out into corporate and do, more corp fin and work on that side on the M&A?
It's one of those things, right, that I start thinking about the next couple of years, right? After 8 years at PwC, I was like, well, do I see myself becoming partner here? Is this what I want the rest of my life to be like? Mm-hmm. That's one question I always ask myself. And the other question is, I always look to my seniors, right? I look at a partner or director and be like, is that who I want to be 5 years from now? Or is that what I want to be doing 5 years from now? And when those questions become difficult to answer, then it's time for a change. And consulting is sort of as folks are well aware, is nonstop, just go, go, go. I was looking for a different pace of life, getting some more work-life balance, getting to enjoy some downtime.
Were you traveling a lot in the Valuations team or no?
Fortunately, I mean, not long distance travel, like not across country or across continents. It was just within the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would call that travel, but it was still a lot of just, you know, a lot of long nights, a lot of effort. And you do get burnt out. I have a lot of respect for folks that see it all the way through, become, you know, the MDs and the partners, but I just knew that wasn't for me.
Yeah. So you're looking for a change of pace. A change of pace. You thought maybe the corporate side would provide that. Did you know specifically, like, how did you even find this role, this M&A? It's so M&A, corporate finance. You're basically looking at potential acquisition candidates or dispositions for the company.
It was more to do with helping evaluate targets once they've been identified, rather than
like an internal valuation team.
Exactly, right. So the benefit of being in consulting is, right, that you're interacting with so many different companies, organizations, teams within organizations. So you kind of have a sense of what everybody does. And you know, a lot of times you're talking to clients and you're like, man, his job sounds cool. I could do that. So that kind of gives me a sense gave me a sense of what I wanted the next step to be for me. And then that just informed my search. Then I started looking for very specific in-house valuation roles, just leveraging my skill set, right? The last thing you want to do is promise someone that, yeah, I'm this big hotshot deal maker, and then show up and just falls flat.
So you came in knowing that you were going to do a lot of similar work that you already had a lot of experience in, so you felt confident.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about, like, now you'd been in the States for a good three plus years. Was your family, did you ever get to see your family? Did you have a significant other at all? Like, what was any kids? What was the looking like?
Yeah.
I mean, you're still pretty young, but just curious.
So the interesting part was when I moved with PwC from Dubai to San Francisco, typically the way such programs are structured is they're a 2-year program. You go spend time in an office abroad, and then you learn all these wonderful things, and then come back to the home office and then share the wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
But when I got to San Francisco in, was it April, May?
April,
I was down in
15 is what your LinkedIn says, but yeah.
yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
I was down in LA for a project for work. I happened to meet someone. We hit it off. We kept in touch, and 6 months later, we got engaged. So,
wow.
And at that point, I called the home office. It's like, guys, I don't think I'm coming back now. This is it. This is it for me. And they understand. There's a lot of you'd be surprised. A lot of relationships sort of, you know, end up developing at work, just by virtue of how much time you guys spent there, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a huge factor in eventually why I ended up staying back. And we got married a year later, and yeah.
Congrats. So this was another fellow PwC consultant, but LA.
But LA, yeah. LA. So we're cool. Both up here now, in San Francisco.
Awesome. So you make the jump. You kind of have at least a support system here. Is your extended family, your mom and dad, are they back in Dubai still? Yeah,
and that sometimes there's one of those things you have to juggle. There's a 12-hour time difference, so you're not going to talk to them as much as you'd like every day, and you know, you might see them once a year getting on a 16-hour flight and things like that.
Yeah, it's tough. So you start this kind of corporate finance M&A role where you're kind of helping this large company kind of do evaluations or some valuation work rather of potential acquisition candidates, or once they were kind of already under LOI or whatever it was. Tell me a little bit of what that work was like. Did you enjoy it? I mean, you weren't doing the deals and going out and searching for them, but you were really an integral part of the team, I assume.
It's awesome because you really have to dive very, very deep into literally the nuts and bolts, right? Of how to evaluate a potential business. And what I mean by that is,
are you doing like precedent transactions? Are you doing everything from DCF through, you know, all the corporate finance stuff?
Well, bit of both, right? You want multiple data points, of course, but it's a lot of getting your hands dirty and just getting into the financials and seeing what historical trends have been, and trying to develop a view of what the business could look like 5 to 10 years from now. And I recognize as I say that, how strange that sounds. Nobody knows what anything's going to look like 10 years from now, but just the thought exercise of it is where the beauty is. What I mean by that is there's experts within the organization, divided into business teams, right? There's the marketing and the product guys, and then there's the supply side guys, and you're working with all of them to understand, one, what could the market for this product look like? Two, what cost constraints could there be? And then three, how do we build an organization around this particular business and what support they'd need? You're literally constructing this little business plan, and then you're seeing, what that's worth. So just the end still looks like a straightforward DCF exercise. But just the path leading up to it, having all those conversations, learning about the business.
The operating model, projection model is actually pretty complex because you're trying to get so many different inputs from everybody in terms of the actual support team that needs to be in place, everything. Pricing power, everything. Yeah.
And then just telling, and like one key aspect of my job was then, right before a bid was due, I talked to the CFO, and that was great. Like literally Fortune 500 company CFO was straight up coming to me and saying, "Hey, what do you think?" So that was new.
Yeah. You're like, I better not get this wrong.
Yeah. Right. But that's where you realize, like, I'm not just going to take my DCF model to him and be like, "Look, this is the NPV." No, like he's going to want to know, hey, where do you think the synergies are? What is the chances of success of this? And, do you think we are the right buyer for such a business? And it's answering those questions. So it's not just the numbers. There's a lot of qualitative stuff that goes into it.
You got to know your internal resources, right? In terms of what you can bring to the mission. Yeah.
Because that meeting with the CFO, it's just him and me. I don't have this entire team sitting there taking all these questions from him. He expects me to know it because I'm the one who's built the model. And just that level of granularity and just really becoming an expert in one particular sector, or just one particular business, as opposed to when you're in consulting, yes, you have a sector focus, but you're still sort of a generalist. You don't really go down to that level of detail.
Yeah.
Especially maybe on the Big Four consulting side. But when you're in corporate, of course, you're living and breathing that. That's what you do on a day-to-day. So you're sitting in a room with all these experts talking the language of industry. And yeah, that was a great learning opportunity.
That's great. So you were there for almost 2 years. In terms of what you were thinking, in terms of your next step, you're now in the Bay Area. So I feel like the venture draw came calling, or the excitement of startup land came calling, and you couldn't resist.
Yeah, you have to, right? I mean, it's one of those things that you're never satisfied as a person. Initially, I was looking for this fantastic thing called work-life balance, and then I got it, and then I realized how much I missed the hustle, and then it's just one of those things. You're just going up and down all the time.
Was the work-life better in M&A, corporate finance? Were you working like at PwC? I assume you were working like 60 to 80 hour weeks, and then did it drop to more consistent 50, 60?
Oh yeah. Well within that, it was good. Yeah, because again, it comes down to how much of a serial acquirer the company is that you're working with, and whether it's just a lot of sort of evaluations and we're conservative as a company, so we're not going to put in a lot of bids. So a lot of it comes down to that, which is good and bad. I mean, it's good because, I learned a lot and I had my work-life balance. It's bad because, well, it just becomes repetitive after a certain time. So you're there for a couple of years.
When did you start kind of looking at the FinTech scene? Or was it just a random recruiter calling you? How did that trend? Were you thinking of a move after like a year and a half? Or you're thinking, maybe it's time?
I mean, so it was, I'd say probably about a year and a half. Yeah, it sounds about right. Mm-hmm. It was when I started looking because there's always a sharp learning curve whenever you join a new place.
Right.
And when I joined that last company, it took a solid, I guess, 4 to 5 months just to, like, you're swimming in the deep end.
Yeah.
Just to find your feet. And then after that, the learning curve sort of starts to flatten out. And then you realize, well, is that it? And I get it. Like, if I was 45 or something with 5 kids and, that kind of position would be ideal. I'd love to.
I'm headed there. I'm 40 with 3 kids. I'm close. No, I'm done.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So, I totally get it. I agree. I think, that first year, even like the first 6 months, you're, if not drowning, trying to swim, and then it does flatten out, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. And then eventually you're like, wait a second, you're in, you're like, I got this.
Yeah. And then I was like, well, what's next, guys?
Right. Did you ever think like they would give you more responsibility or change, or was there anything internally that you could have done that would have changed things, like maybe work more on the deal side?
I think that opportunity specifically did not exist. There were other opportunities, non-deal related, more sort of internal finance related, which I wasn't too keen on.
Like FP&A type stuff?
Like FP&A type stuff, which it's more, it just becomes, it's very procedural.
Yeah, you would have been bored there, 6 months later, probably.
And I mean, I didn't want to use the word bored, because
okay.
A lot of people who love that job.
Some people love it. Yeah.
And credit to them. That's what keeps them going. For me, I just felt like I know you're very, very deadline constrained, just timelines closing and whatnot, reporting requirements. And I feel like that's just going back to PwC again. And I don't want that, right? I don't want the constant pressure of deadlines and just being go all the time.
And so you were getting probably paid pretty well. Coming, you were a manager at PwC, 8 years there. I assume you were getting, mid 100s at that point, if not close to 200 plus. Did you have to take a pay cut for that lifestyle upgrade to the corporate side, or no?
No, I think that when I was in PwC, there's always that notion, when you're in consulting, you're like, oh, those folks on the corporate side probably make a lot more than I do and work a lot less than I do. And at least in my experience, that proved to be right. So when I made the jump over,
you did make the jump. You made a big pay increase.
Yep. Yeah, there was a pay bump. There was a massive reduction in hours. So yeah, that myth.
You won on both sides, man. Yeah. So why look? Yeah, no, I get it. I understand. You missed the hustle. You were like, hey, I want some upside.
It's one of those things, right? There's this show called Silicon Valley that I heard this line on there that stuck with me. It was this line called "Rest Invest," right? Just stick around. No one's bothering you. Let your options vest and let your RSUs vest and just chill. And I used to always think,
rest and vest.
Yeah,
that was it. Yeah,
rest and vest. Yeah, rest and vest. and I used to always think, man, that is the life. But then, I mean, I didn't quite live that. But yeah, I realized at some point I have a lot more time, which is good. Maybe I could start a side hustle, but I'm not that creative. So I have a lot more to offer intellectually. So why not just find something else that's really sort of making me, putting me a little bit more on edge, and see where that takes me.
So tell me how you found your current role, and, again, in something in valuations. So we'll call it FinTech just to keep you anonymous. But tell me a little bit how you found that. Was it a recruiter? Or you had just LinkedIn? What kind of opened up those doors?
It was LinkedIn again. It was just I know I wanted to stay in valuations because that is sort of, for lack of a better word, what sets me apart, right? That's what I know best and what I can do best.
Right.
So I'm always looking for valuations roles. And yeah, so there was this role at this FinTech company, and it seemed super exciting, right? Just the world of FinTech is, again, something that's changing the finance industry. The big banks are starting to sort of change how they do things, and because these FinTech companies are just being so disruptive. It was exciting. This opportunity came along, and they were looking for someone to sort of lead the valuations team. And it was a win on both sides. Again, it was more money. It was a leadership. So I had my own team. and as well as it was a fast-paced and dynamic working environment. So yeah, that was a good move.
And then in terms of future, you think you just probably be in the startup scene going forward, like indefinitely, or probably maybe try to rest and vest for a little while, even though you're not really resting, but at least we'll vest if you stick around.
Yeah, I think for now that's what it seems like what's going to happen. Yeah, it's been a couple of months actually, not too long.
Yeah.
So it's
still all new for you.
Still on you. Yeah, learning a lot.
How many people? How big is your team, if you don't mind sharing? You can give a range.
It's not like a huge organization. It's 2 to 5.
Okay.
Which is good enough for me, being a first time
manager.
Team lead. Yeah. So that's
not easy.
Good. Yeah.
Not easy. Cool, man. Well, this has been great. Anything else you want to share, just like a career advice or any words of wisdom, kind of looking back on your path that you'd like to share, maybe for international students or just in general?
I mean, the one thing that's helped me all the time is just keep an open mind and never think there's something you cannot do. I've changed industries, I've changed continents, I've changed different teams and a lot of things. And I'm probably I'm not like some genius or anything with a high IQ. I'm your average guy, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. So it's just a matter of just staying persistent and keeping an open mind.
I like that. That's inspirational. I like it. I love the inspiration. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this was great. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, patrick@wallstreetoasis.com. And until next time.